In the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful, peace be upon you all. Welcome to another session of From the Desk of Ghamidi, the series of discussions on the 23 questions that are usually raised on the thought of Javed Ahmed Ghamidi continues today. Today, we are about to start the 52nd episode. On the topic of the first revelation and cave of Hira, the objections, doubts, and questions that are raised regarding his views on this topic are being presented to Ghamidi Sahab. Thank you, Ghamidi Sahab, for your time. We had started presenting some of the questions and doubts raised by some listeners and scholars about your stance in the previous sessions. Some of these could not be completed in the last episode. Today, we shall strive to start from those points without any interruptions, and I wish that you may now answer those other aspects too. The first question which I wish to ask from you is this. There is another different point of view regarding cave of Hira that comes up, which is that the Prophet, peace be upon him, visited cave of Hira after receiving prophethood. In the true dreams, the decision to award prophethood was made. Once the Prophet, peace be upon him, became aware, he used to go frequently to cave of Hira, and the incidents happening later on had occurred there. What is your opinion about it?
Why was there a need to go to cave of Hira after that? Now, the Prophet, peace be upon him, is entrusted with responsibility. He would arise and carry the dawah or call to God to the people, train them, arrange for their education. Prior to this, I had presented to you a narration in which it is mentioned that when he needed to perform prayer, he would go out into the valleys of Makkah. Hazrat Ali used to accompany him. Abu Talib once chanced upon them on that occasion. Other incidents of this type are also available in the books of Sirah or prophetic biography. So why was there a need to visit again later on? I would like to tell you that if this matter was of a later stage, then it would have been reported by many a Sahabi or companion. Nothing of this kind happened. I have presented to you the way it actually occurred. Regarding this, according to me, the narration that has been accepted by Ibn Hisham is acceptable to a large extent. There does not arise any big objection on it, although the narrators, while giving details of them, may inadvertently insert a few things in them. So, it is quite possible that there too something had been inserted. However, a very correct general impression is formed from it, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, as per a tradition of the Abrahamic religion, used to perform Itikaf, or spiritual seclusion. Many things are known about the Prophet, peace be upon him, from history, such as he never indulged in shirk or polytheism. He never worshipped idols. He generally adhered to all the good traditions of Abrahamic religion. He even performed Hajj, or major pilgrimage, and Umrah, the minor pilgrimage before prophethood. This point is explicitly known and is present in the narration of Bukhari that those things about hurmat, or prohibited acts, and hilat, or permissible acts, which had become doubtful, there too he followed the right path. Never did he incline himself towards any haram or forbidden thing. Hence, according to the tradition of the Abrahamic faith itself, if there was any ibadah or worship or practice or an issue of servitude or an act of a particular kind or sadaqah or charity in the way of God, for all this there should not be any confusion, because the Prophet, peace be upon him, was among the offspring of Ibrahim, peace be upon him, and had taken birth in the way of Ibrahim, peace be upon him.
Ghamidi Sahab, one character came under discussion, and in both narrations that character appears in the Sirah of Ibn Hisham and in Bukhari as well. This is the person of Waraqa bin Nawfal. There are some questions relating to him, and I wish that you guide us there too. The first academic and intellectual question that comes to mind is this. We are led to understand whether, in the case of Christians or Jews, they do not have any relationship with the haram or sacred sanctuary of Makkah. If he was a Christian, why was he performing tawaf or circumambulation of the haram? And when he was sure that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was the true one, why did he not accept Islam?
The answer to the first question is this. The people of Arabia were quite aware of the fact that it is the house built by Ibrahim, peace be upon him. They knew well that the Umrah, the Hajj, are the traditions established by Ibrahim, peace be upon him, among them the religious tradition of Ibrahim. Or what is known as Abrahamic religion, they had familiarity with all its various commands. I have stated the complete backdrop in my book, Meezan, And I have explained that they used to hold fast to prayer, observe fasting, perform Hajj and Umrah, and give zakah or alms tax. They were familiar with all this. Even Friday prayer was taken care of in Dar al-Nadwa, and its sermon too used to be given. Similarly, the practices of nikah or marriage, talaq or divorce, and all such traditions existed. When a person has a relationship with such a background, if he is a Christian, will he forsake Baitullah? Will he simply do away with his Abrahamic tradition? His acceptance of Christianity implied that he was introduced to such books which were revealed after Hazrat Ibrahim, peace be upon him. He became aware of the fact that prophets had been continuing even after him. So he started studying the teachings of those prophets. And after becoming a Christian, what did he do? Did he forsake prayer or fasting or the commands of religion? Which practices among these are forbidden in the Bible? So why should it be imagined that the type of Christians we see today, he would be a similar Christian? He was standing in the backdrop of the Abrahamic tradition, and in the background of Abrahamic guidance, he was studying all those things and assimilating instructions in the same way in which we have iman or faith in the Prophet, peace be upon him. Follow the Quran and act according to the Prophet's sunnah. However, along with it, we read the Torah or the Psalms. So he could have been reading in a similar manner. Hence, it was as if he had declared that whatever he had from the religion of Ibrahim, he was following. And now he also had with him the traditions of Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him. This too was most welcome to him, and he acted upon it as well. So people should perceive this matter in such a backdrop. To be a Christian never meant that one would at once proclaim that now he is forsaking the traditions of Ibrahim, peace be upon him, and going on to accept St. Paul.
Ghamidi Sahab, why did he not accept faith?
How do you know that he did not accept Islam? The narration of his conversation with the Prophet, peace be upon him, that has been reported is the conversation of a mu'min or believer. We often assume that a person would formally present himself to offer bay'ah or allegiance. But this did not happen in the first phase. The Prophet, peace be upon him, introduced Islam. The people began to understand it. The people whose hearts affirmed it testified to him being the Prophet of God. The incident of Hazrat Siddiq's acceptance of Iman has been reported in a similar manner. So Waraqa accepted Iman. However, since he departed from the world soon after, the details of his actions could not materialize. Please do observe the reporting of his own words. What does he say? He says that if I remain alive, then I will be with you, I will assist you. He has complied with something which is among the greatest rights of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that the Prophet must be supported. He expressed that on the very first day. So why would we say that he did not accept Iman? For accepting Iman, there is not necessarily a formal ritual to be undertaken. The reality is that he accepted that he was the Prophet of God, that he had been sent for this ummah or community, and he bore witness to this. This is the same as when we accept Iman. What do we say? We say that we bear testimony to the fact that there is no God except God, and that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the messenger of God. The same was stated by him in front of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Subhanallah. Ghamidi Sahab, now we move ahead. The secondary questions that were raised on the scholarly issues, you elaborated your points of contention with great patience and humility. Let us now come to the debate on riwayat, or narrations. You had already spoken in detail on narrations, the analysis of the isnad, or chain of transmission, and on parallel narrations. There are some questions related to this. The first question is that among us, in the science of hadith, it is said that if the narration reaches up to any sahabi or companion, then regarding the sahaba, it is confirmed that as-sahabatu kulluhum udulun, meaning all the companions are trustworthy. Hence, any chain of narration with a companion is of the level of Ahsan or sound. So the narration from Bukhari is of the level of Ahsan. The narration of Ibn Hisham is reported from a tabi'i or successor. My question to you is, in the complete collection of hadith, the narration of Urwa ibn az-Zubayr from Lady Aisha, may God be pleased with her, is accepted by people later. It is well known and publicized, but in the narration of Ibn Hisham, the perspective that comes forth is different. There is no mention of any suicide, nor are such points found. If you can name any book or any confirmation for the narration of Ibn Hisham, any historical record or narration, or at least a mawquf or suspended narration which supports it, so that people may know that it is not just one isolated report.
There are a few points that should be understood with regard to this field of study. You see, when something is being narrated in association with the Prophet, peace be upon him, and in that narration, the first narrator, of course a companion, says that he heard such and such from the Prophet, peace be upon him, or he says that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said this, or even if the narration is given in paraphrase but attributed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, then we term it as a marfu, or elevated narration. It can be directly associated with the Prophet, peace be upon him. When we get a narration from the companions, then we call it mawquf, or suspended. Why is it called so? Because the companion narrates the point on his own, but does not clarify whether he heard it directly from the Prophet, peace be upon him, or it was said in his presence, or whether he merely witnessed the incident. Since he does not specify, we classify it as mawquf, and we say that the point stated is such that no companion could have said it on his own, so it is still given weight. Similarly, we have narrations from the tabi'in, or successors. There are many marasil, or mursal narrations. Some excellent writings are found in this category. There is not much debate about their isnad. Those too are often presented, even though technically mursal, because a tabi'i has stated it, but the point under discussion could only have come from the companions. This is a sort of informed speculation based on the nature of the topic. All such narrations that come to us, regarding them, the first thing that must be understood is that it cannot be claimed with certainty that this was surely stated by the Prophet, peace be upon him. It remains a scholarly judgment that probably this point was stated in this manner. Now you have asked regarding the narration of Ibn Hisham, so I am telling you that people have not really paid attention to an important point. Here, Urwa ibn al-Zubayr is narrating from Lady Aisha, may God be pleased with her, which we see in the narration of Bukhari. That narration, on which we have raised questions, has some doubtful content. Some of its details are considered objectionable. And in the end, an addition has been made, which is presented as Balagat al-Zuhri, or isolated reports of al-Zuhri. So on one side is this narration, and on the other side is the narration we see in Ibn Hisham. Even though a tabi'i narrates it, what is he narrating? In reality, he is sitting right in front of a companion and listening to it. Who is that companion? It is Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr, may God be pleased with him. Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr, may God be pleased with him, is among the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So, in this respect, if you consider the circumstances of both narrations, there is not much difference.
That is to say, in both situations, the Sahabi or companion is present.
That is to say, there the narration is being reported through Sayyeda, and here in front of a companion, the narration is being stated. And I had drawn your attention to this. He does not raise any objection. This narration, although it exists in his family, even then, he does not say anything on its basis. He never says, my aunt has something completely different to say. His younger brother, Urwa bin Zubair, presents a narration. Yet regarding that narration, no question arises in his mind. He listens to it with full patience. And a tabi'i, or successor follower of the companions, says that in his presence, this narration was described. This whole incident was narrated before him, and then it was transmitted further. So, if you look at it from this perspective, then there doesn't remain much difference between this narration and the other. After that, you see, we have the maghazi, or historical accounts of battles, of Urwa bin Zubayr. Those two, even though narrated by people of the later period, present a different story.
The same Urwa bin Zubayr who is mentioned in Bukhari?
The very same Urwa bin Zubayr who is in Bukhari. If you put both of those narrations before yourselves, the narration that appears in the Maghazi of Urwa bin Zubayr and the narration of the same Urwa bin Zubayr in Bukhari, then even if you spend hours comparing them, you will find absolute nonconformity between them.
Isn't there the mention of suicide?
There it is mentioned that rugs were laid down. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was made to sit, and Gabriel taught him. That is a completely different account. Even those incidents are not mentioned there, nor is it mentioned that he was taken to Waraqa bin Nawfal. In other words, none of these appear there. And its first part, to a large extent, is the same as in the narration of Ibn Hisham. In the same way, it is explicitly mentioned there. Urwa bin Zubair says that the first revelation was what is in Surah Al-Najm. So if I place all this material before you, then how will you find the correct path amidst these contradictions? That is why I urge you to consider my methodology, which I had stated. The Book of God, the Quran, has stated in Surah Al-Najm that this was the manner in which the first revelation came. And in this manner, then the second meeting with Gabriel occurred. We ourselves have contemplated upon the Quran to understand which was the first surah, and we even went to the extent of determining which were the subsequent surahs that were revealed after it. How did the fatarat or intervals occur? Which was the first and which was the second fatra or pause in revelation? And in this marfu narration, or narration traced back directly to the Prophet, peace be upon him, the narration of Jabir bin Abdullah, what is stated about Surah Al-Muddathir, how does the Quran itself explain it? After this, what need remains for us to entangle ourselves in the confusion, contradictions, and differences between these narrations? I could have presented to you this whole corpus. However, I have made the comparison of just two narrations. One is in Bukhari, and most of the muhaddisin, or scholars of hadith, have reported it. The second is reported by the earliest author of Sirah, or prophetic biography. Just compare these two. What story exists in one and what exists in the other?
Ghamidi Sahab, your answer was very detailed. Let us take the discussion forward. Regarding narrations, this question comes rationally to mind. We see that there is a treasure of narrations. More or less 70,000 narrations exist, the marfu narrations, or those traced directly to the Prophet, peace be upon him, the authentic narrations proven through chain of transmission. Tell me, does the question arise in your mind as well? This is such a significant incident. The Prophet, peace be upon him, recounts events from his childhood and even earlier. Then what is the reason that not a single marfu narration, in the words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is available about how this event happened to him?
I myself have raised this question. Try to recall. I had said this is the most significant incident in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. This is the event that transformed Muhammad bin Abdullah into Muhammad, the messenger of God, peace be upon him. This should have been narrated by the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself. Its details should have been stated. So why was it not described? I had said that Sayyida Khadija herself, who is seen playing a major role in this incident, never narrated it. What does never narrated mean? It means that through her words, through her narration, nowhere do we find this in the collections of hadith, nor do we find it even in historical works. However, if you look at the narration of Sayyida Aisha, or at the other narration in Ibn Hisham, there the narration is being done with reference to the Prophet, peace be upon him, although not in the formal way of saying, so-and-so heard this from the Prophet, peace be upon him. That is to say, the methodology followed in a marfu narration, where the Sahabi says, I heard the Prophet, peace be upon him, say this in front of me, or I saw him do this. We do not find any such thing here. So it is quite clear, when the Quran has already described this incident, then there is no need for further detail. Albeit, in the narration of Jabir bin Abdullah, its reference has been made. Now you see, references to both narrations appear. We only recently read the narration of Jabir bin Abdullah. You are aware of what was said there? In it, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I was coming back and I saw Jibril in this manner. Then I came home, and when I said, Zamiluni, Zamiluni, cover me, then Surah Al-Mudassir was revealed. But what was additionally said with it? He said, I saw Jibril. He was the same Jibril who had met me on Mount Hira. So what does this mean? That both the incidents of Surah Al-Najm were described summarily by the Prophet, peace be upon him, on this occasion. This summary is sufficient for us. It is the details where a single point has been turned into a whole tale. And about that, I had said in my brief reply, this is just a tale. And if we truly inquire into it, then we will conclude as correct only the facts that we find in the Quran.
Let us move ahead, Ghamidi Sahab. One very important question has been raised, and it concerns your point of view from the aspect of narrations. In fact, it is said that in your thought, there is no consistency, that compatibility and flow are missing. You have commented on Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. You said that the muhaddisin, or scholars of hadith, raised questions about some of his qualities. I am not going into that debate. However, suspicion arose regarding his conceptualizations and the narrations reported from him. He is the same Ibn Shihab whom in your book Meezan, people say you have quoted narrations from. So, when there is a problem, he is rejected, and when he is in conformity, he is accepted.
In the discussion that I have given, some questions must have arisen even about the book of Bukhari regarding the balagat or brief transmitted reports found in Bukhari. Questions must have arisen about those as well. Many narrations of Bukhari are in Meezan. I have mentioned Muslim too. I have read his narrations as well, and I have critiqued his book at some points too. In Meezan, there are many narrations from Muslim also. So I will say that for those who raise such questions, it becomes quite evident that they are not familiar with this field of knowledge. This is the field of historiography. That is to say, when the history of the Prophet, peace be upon him, is narrated, we call it hadith, or reports traced back to the Prophet, peace be upon him. When the historical incidents of the Sahaba or companions are narrated, we call them athar, or transmitted reports from companions. When other general events are narrated, we call it history. I have already told you that such narrations are also reported by historians and authors of sirah or prophetic biographies, as well as by the muhaddisin or hadith scholars. In their era, it was possible for them to conduct research about the narrators. Today, that is no longer possible, neither for you nor for me. That era is gone. The narrators who said this was narrated by such and such sahabi or companion, and from him so and so heard, and from him so and so heard, that description of the chain of narration, today we have no means to research those chains. Therefore, the narrations that the muhaddisin selected, the narrations they accepted and considered reliable, today we are compelled to base ourselves on those narrations as they transmitted them in order to carry the discussion further. We have no other option. Let me give you an example. Suppose we have to write the history of the Mughal period. We are not in that period. We are not directly observing the events. We cannot even meet the people who knew of those incidents. The history that was written during that period, take Tarikh-e-Firishta, Ma'asir al-Umara, Ain-e-Akbari, those are the books. Obviously, whatever material we obtain from them, only that can be analyzed, compared, and selected in the light of knowledge and reason. We will then study whether such accounts can be accepted or not. This is the process followed in the study of history all over the world. It never happens that we simply reject sources outright. I am telling you, debates continue even today regarding what exactly was the source of Musnad Ahmad bin Hanbal. In Musnad Ahmad bin Hanbal, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal records the sources of the narrations. The book was compiled, the narrations were written, but where was the original? Please read the researches that have been done on this. You will find out how this book has reached us. With Bukhari and Muslim, so many manuscripts exist across the world. In some manuscripts, certain narrations are found, while in others they are absent. For Muwatta Imam Malik, we have one manuscript in our region, while a different manuscript exists in North Africa, and many narrations exist within them, with additions, omissions, and interpolations. In this way, the scribes transmitted them. So, after carrying out all this research, if I say that these books should be thrown into a river, would that be the right attitude?
No.
You see, this is human work. If our muhaddisin trusted Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri and accepted his narrations, then we now have to examine and test those narrations. But no principle can be established whereby if a mistake is found in Bukhari, we discard the entire Bukhari. Or if we feel there is an error in Muslim, we do away with it completely. For example, the muhaddisin say that the book of Muslim contains narrators with Shia inclinations. If you are a Sunni, you may say, I am not ready to accept this. But I am saying that this is a precious collection. The people who compiled these were not lacking in effort. They compiled these works and informed us of the conditions of narrators. Now those in whom they place trust as narrators, whatever they narrate, we must take their reports as worth considering. After that, we have the right to evaluate them in the light of the Quran and the Sunnah, or against actual historical conditions, and analyze them exactly as I have stated in my book. We should check, does anything go against the Quran and Sunnah? We should check, does it conform with the general principles of reason and knowledge? And these are the very principles established by the muhaddisin themselves. After that, whatever is found in accordance with them, we shall accept, and whatever is not in accordance, we shall reject. So, the matter of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri is not an ordinary one. Our muhaddisin call him Amir al-Mu'minin fi al-Hadith, or leader of the faithful in Hadith. A huge store of narrations has reached us through him. The books are filled with his narrations. So can we deprive ourselves of this huge treasure? And what kind of principle would it be under which in any historical project you reject the entire basis? Nothing remains after that. I can speak about Al-Waqidi and tell you about the critiques against him. I can speak about Ibn Ishaq and tell you what people say about him. These are the individuals who narrated our history. About Ibn Ishaq, we even find some positive opinions. The same is true for Al-Tabari and many other historians, regarding whom books have been written and research has been published. Whether a personality was real or not, who the person was, whether unknown or an imam, debates exist about such issues. So this is knowledge. In this intellectual world, things are not discarded so easily. The same method of analysis and inquiry is adopted. The real point to bear in mind is that our complete religion has reached us through the Quran and the Sunnah. The Quran has reached us through the ijma, or consensus, and tawatur, or uninterrupted mass transmission of the Muslims, and so has the Sunnah. It is the historical record of the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. If it is directly referenced to the Prophet, peace be upon him, then it is called hadith, or report traced back to the Prophet, peace be upon him. If the incidents involving the Prophet, peace be upon him, are narrated, then it is called sirah, or prophetic biography. If the incidents of the Sahaba, or companions, are narrated, then they are called athar, or transmitted reports from companions. If general incidents or a mixture of all these are recorded, then it is termed history. You are aware that in Tabaqat Ibn Sa'd, the first part deals with the sirah, or biography, of the Prophet, peace be upon him. In the history of Ibn Kathir too, the first part is devoted to the sirah, or biography, of the Prophet, peace be upon him. So basically, this is history. When the historians narrate something, then after their era, you cannot directly go into that era and research those points. Whatever they have narrated is kept in view, and its grain is separated from its chaff. Since the beginning, this work has been going on in the Muslim Ummah. The investigation of the narrations of Ibn Shihab Zuhri will continue, as will the investigations of the narrations of Bukhari. The investigations of the narrations of Abu Dawud and Nisai will also continue. We will accept some while we shall reject others. However, is it a mere plaything? No. It is always based on the principles stated by the scholars of Hadith. For example, sometimes the discussion will be on the chain of narration, isnad, or sometimes on connectedness, itisal. Sometimes it will be about the memory and retention of narrators, and often the discussion will be on the text itself to check whether it goes against the general principles of knowledge and intellect, or whether there are contradictions within it. This is the work of tanqih, or critical investigation, which the scholars of the Muslim Ummah have been carrying out for the last 14 centuries. We, however, are used to listening to incidents, stories, and tales. We have never really entered the domain of this science. So, if a couple of words of criticism are spoken against a narrator or a personality, the invariable reply is, okay, you are criticizing here, so why have you accepted him in such and such place? This is not a proper approach. We should understand this science and its nature. Historical records, whether from the East or the West, whether ours or of any other nation, are always compiled in an era, and their research and investigation is carried out in the same way. Our hadith scholars have done outstanding work. For example, can you find a nation that tells you in such detail about thousands of people, their character, their personality, their habits, etc.? All of these details, which I have presented to you, are told to us by the same muhaddisin. It is the muhaddisin who say that balaghat-e-zuhri are wahiya, or useless. The muhaddisin tell us that his marasil, or mursal reports without complete chain, are like castles in the air. They tell us that he indulges in tadris, or concealing a weak link in transmission. And they also tell us that he does idraj, or interpolation. However, despite all this, their overall assessment is that his narrations in general are reliable, and they have accepted narrations from him. In fact, they have given him an extraordinary stature, similar to what the entire Ummah gives to Bukhari and Muslim. So, when the muhaddisin in their narrations have granted such a position to Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, am I going to dislodge him from his position? And if I do so, then it will be a non-academic attitude. Hence, we are compelled to examine each of the narrations separately. Neither can the whole of Bukhari be thrown into the Arabian Sea, nor Muslim, nor the collections of hadith, nor the books of history. Each one of them has to be assessed on its individual merits. And in the way I have put this material before you, it will likewise be examined, whether there are any contradictions among them, and what reliable material has been exposed to us. Whatever complies and conforms to these standards will be accepted. Whatever does not comply, regarding them, our anxiety and dissatisfaction will be expressed, and in some cases, they will even be rejected.
Ghamidi Sahab, you have expressed beautifully and in great detail. You have elaborated upon the point that if in another place you have accepted the narration of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, then what is the underlying viewpoint behind it? Please clarify one point, as the audience must be interested. We often think that studies and research on hadith goes on. There are narrations which are weak, da'if too, and fabricated, maudu, also, as per the labels given by the muhaddisin. However, with respect to Sahih Bukhari and its place in the Ummah, my question to you is this: has any researcher, mufassir or exegete, muhaddis or hadith scholar, or alim or scholar, ever questioned any of the narrations of Bukhari? As it is said that there were 300,000 narrations in circulation and those were investigated and only a few thousand were selected. The title too is Al-Jami as-Sahih, or the authentic collection. So, has anybody ever rejected any narration from Sahih Bukhari?
Since the time Sahih Bukhari came into existence, people have been criticizing some of its narrations. Who is unaware of the criticism of Al-Daraqutni? You know that Ibn Hajar, in his commentary, has replied to those objections. Even after that, in every age, people have criticized it. In our contemporary times too, there are many scholars who have objected to certain narrations of Bukhari. So this chain will continue in the same fashion. It is the attitude of the common people that they are led to believe that Imam Bukhari had revelations from the heavens. But it is human work. The work of Imam Bukhari is indeed of an outstanding nature. He worked extremely hard and conducted great investigations. When it is said that it is Al-Jami as-Sahih, the word Sahih is not to be understood in its literal sense, as in the Urdu language. Rather, it is a technical term of the muhaddisin. That is, if after research it is known about a narration that no question has been raised regarding the character of the narrator, if it is known that its chain of narration, or isnad, is connected, there is no gap with respect to dates. If it is known that in terms of memory and retention, no fault can be pointed out. And also that no muhaddis or hadith scholar has identified a defect in it, then it is called a sahih, or sound, narration. Therefore, it is a technical term, and the knowledge of this field must be understood properly. And this work of Imam Bukhari, though of extraordinary merit, remains the work of a human being. When you study the book of Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim, you will be surprised to learn that although both share the relationship of ustaz or teacher and shagird or student, at times the narrations of Imam Bukhari were not accepted by Imam Muslim. There are narrations found in Muslim which Imam Bukhari did not accept. Rather, Imam Muslim severely criticized in his preface the principle adopted by Imam Bukhari, and he even used harsh words in that criticism, though at a personal level he respected him greatly. So, all this discussion belongs to the intellectual realm. Here it is not the case that once a certain researcher has worked on something, then every word of his becomes equivalent to the Book of God. When people say that after the Book of God, it is the most accurate and correct book, such sayings are purely sentimental expressions. In the intellectual world, they are not acceptable. The work of Bukhari is greatly esteemed. It is outstanding and worthy of respect. However, this work belongs to the field of historical criticism, and historical criticism applies to every person. This work of the Ummah has not stopped even for a single day, and it will not stop until Qiyamah or the last day.
Ghamidi Sahab, you replied in great detail to all the questions. I had begun with whether the Prophet, peace be upon him, had become anxious and the doubts that emanated from it. Then we discussed whether there was any form of striving, desire, longing, or wish of the Prophet. We presented our doubts about it. The points came up with reference to cave of Hira, Waraqa bin Nawfal, and the narrations. The last question I wish to present is based upon Surah An-Najm. You base the whole incident, rather the whole concept of the coming of revelation and its methodology and the response expressed by the Prophet on this surah. The question is regarding Surah An-Najm. Why can it not be said that the two incidents stated in this surah relating to the meeting with Gabriel, peace be upon him, might be incidents that occurred after the receiving of prophethood? Where is it written in Surah An-Najm that the first revelation, when it was given for the very first time to the Prophet, peace be upon him, is this very incident? Where is the clarification in Surah An-Najm?
The background in which Surah An-Najm states this incident leaves no plausibility for that interpretation. There it is being stated that he is the messenger of God, and whatever he has said is not from his own desire. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. That whatever is being presented to you, the Quran, is the book of God, and he has been sent the revelation. Obviously, the arguments being presented here are for the prophethood of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Its address is to the audience of the Prophet. The reference being made is, this Prophet has received a revelation in this manner. In this manner, he met with Jibreel. In this manner, he has been given the book. So, will this be said 10 years later?
It is the answer to the incidents of the initial phase.
Exactly. If it is not the first incident, then how will this incident serve as an argument? It can only be the first incident. And after that, see for yourself the words, وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى. And indeed he saw him another time. I presented to you the narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself from Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet said that only on 2 occasions did he see Jibreel, peace be upon him, in his true form. If for the first time he does not come in his true form, and that confidence and certainty is not there, that I have been given prophethood, that God's angel has come to me, and that I saw the angel in his true shape, then how could it happen later? Hence this interpretation itself is incorrect. And note that this surah also states that the Prophet, peace be upon him, saw Jibreel al-Amin in his true form. The narration also states that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said only twice, have I seen him in his original form. And you yourself saw in the narration of Jabir bin Abdullah that the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself gave the same reference. The first time I saw him was on Mount Hira, and the second time I saw him while walking on the way.
So there are only 2 incidents.
The narrations are saying the same. The Quran also says the same. The same reality is presented when we study Surah An-Najm. Hence, there cannot be 2 opinions on this.
Ghamidi Sahab in great detail in this last episode with reference to the first revelation and cave of Hira, comprising 9 episodes of exchanges, your raising of scholarly questions, and based on those scholarly questions, the presentation of a different view in place of an established one, supported by arguments, was elaborated. At the end of every discussion, I ask you to express your sentiments. Generally, it is thought that Ghamidi Sahab holds a different point of view in place of an established, publicized, and popular point of view held by the whole Ummah. And those people connected with the traditional culture of Islam fear that if they accept this new point of view of Ghamidi Sahab, then their Iman or faith and Islam might be threatened. Please tell us the conclusion of this complete discussion.
I have presented this whole material in front of people. I have explained how the Book of God, the Quran, describes the first revelation. I have explained how prophethood was conferred on the Prophet, peace be upon him. I have explained all that we have in this regard in the narrations. And I have also explained that I am not saying this for the first time today. Much before me, even much before Imam Bukhari, the first author of the Sirah or biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him, had expressed differences with this tale, and he presented a completely different narration. The conclusion is that we should develop an intellectual temperament among ourselves. The collection of narrations should never be considered revelation or inspiration. The words of the Prophet, peace be upon him, were narrated by narrators, and a lot of confusions crept into those narrations. Anxieties developed, contradictions appeared, and additions of narrators were included in them. The work of their investigation and audit must continue. If we do not carry on with these investigations, then the light provided to us by the Book of God will become hazy. The Book of God demands from us, make me your final guide and ruler, and then ponder upon the rest of the sources. If this temperament develops among us, then I say truly, after that, we have a huge source in the form of the Book of God, and through it, all these suspicions and differences generated by the narrations will vanish automatically.
Ghamidi Sahab, we have run out of time. The objections raised on your thoughts with reference to the first revelation and cave of Hira, today this discussion reaches its completion. If further doubts or questions arise, then God willing, we shall bring them up as an appendix at the end of the series. Ghamidi Sahab, thank you very much for your time. In the end, I must say that with exemplary patience, self-control, and great humility, you answered our questions and presented your point of contention. We hope that people will reflect upon it. Inshallah, we will again be at your service with a new objection in the next session. Thank you very much for your time till now.
Thank you very much.